The Government of Canada, which includes Justin Trudeau, has been actively, with the participation, full cooperation of the justice system and the media, information propagandists, especially at Bell Tel Global Media, have been trying to sell a bill of goods that it's about mental health, when really what it's about is about the suppression of our constitutional rights, privileged protection of those who do harm, willingly and wholeheartedly by the system. Legal aid is nothing more than a scam to keep the lid on what is really going on out there in the legal community and covering up all the government corruption and wrongdoing, especially in Ontario. I am here to personally accuse the Canadian government and the provincial government of international human rights violations, of violations in civil law and domestic law with regard to deliberate denial of their duty under law. None of them are acting in good faith, and they are all covering up the truth. Labour Board of Ontario, the Government of Ontario, Workplace Slavery and Interference Board of Ontario are all actively undermining, using their position of trust to actively undermine the very system that they profess to uphold. There is the Occupational Health and Safety Act is the first law in Ontario when it comes to protecting workers. Then comes Workplace Safety and Insurance Act. The OSA, which is Occupational Health and Safety Act, binds the Crown, which is, yes, that's you, Queen Elizabeth, and all your minions who work for you, to cover up the truth of your slavery and international human rights abuses. Historically, the biggest human rights abuser in the history of the world, responsible for the atrocities of India, which brought Gandhi to do what he had to do, responsible for apartheid in South Africa, responsible for every genocide on the planet, including our own genocide of our own native people, where it has been documented historically of giving medically tainted blankets in order to deliberately annihilate a human race, another civilization. And this is the one that we protect. This is the one who is using her rights of privilege and her law of privilege to protect us. You wonder why the world is chaos? It's very simple. We need true democracy. One person, one vote, and bring the biggest human rights abuser in the history of the world to the International Human Rights Court. And I believe my evidence of the last 14 years is proof of a systemic, deliberate, systemic pattern of abuse across all platforms of so-called protection. Based solely on protecting those of privilege, the ones that are privileged to be protected by her law, by her justice. I hold the Queen personally responsible for the torture that I have been suffered to endure as one of her subjects of Canada. I am a person with a disability. You want proof that they are nothing but liars and they speak for disabled? That's why it's called Arch Disability Law Management. Think about that for a moment. Disability Law Management. The job, they profess to speak for the disabled, and yet all they do is manage disability law on behalf of the disabled. Yes, David Baker Law gets all full credit for all this arch disability. He's done a great job for the government. Nobody in this, he's part of the BC Civil Liberties thing that went to the court in order to get euthanasia. Not one disabled person asked for euthanasia. When it was brought before the Supreme Court, they were talking about persons with diseases and intolerable living conditions, not disabled. And yet here we go in the ruling, surprise, surprise, disabled are included. Then you have them coming up and saying that, oh, but severely disabled want the right to die. You know what? After the way I was treated for the last 13 years deliberately by this government, yeah, I wanted to die. They wanted me to kill myself. Because nobody can tolerate living under these conditions ever. Worst part about it, I was a fully functioning Canadian, and my only mistake was trusting these bastards who claim to be here for democracy when really all they're doing is pissing on the graves of everybody who ever stood up for it. They are not about democracy unless their democracy is covering up their wrongdoing. This is the state of legal affairs in Canada. I can't even get a statement written down about wrongdoing that has been repeatedly done to me by those persons that are supposed to be upholding the law. They refuse to take my statements. They refuse to accept my evidence, which is plenty. I've got more than enough evidence of wrongdoing in this medical community, and all they do is say that I'm mentally disturbed. They label you to say disturbed. PTSD when they're the ones who caused it and are the cause of it. They are my oppressors. They are your oppressors. There is no patient safety in Canada. They are only focused on that 20 minutes it takes to print out that computer printout to say you're number 34. What are you here for? 10 minutes to see you. They got you written down, and now your wait time's over. Even though you're suffered to wait 9.5 hours for somebody to even see you. And God help you if you have a complaint about the medical community. Let me be perfectly clear. I'm not the only political prisoner in this country when it comes to medical harm. Every single doctor and nurse that is trying to do the right thing under the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm is being directed by non-medical personnel, persons with MBAs, Workplace Slavery and Interference Board, where, oh yeah, they can say whether I get paid if I get injured at work, but they have no right to control my treatment. Once treatment has been properly identified and set, and especially under a system when the employer who is responsible for the injury is required to cover all costs, and the Workplace Slavery and Interference Board is supposed to cover all costs, there should be no question as to whether or not I get treatment. You want to argue whether or not I get paid because you don't want to own up to it being at work, that's what you're there for. No doctor is allowed to use their non-medical opinion to refuse me treatment. And yet, since this thing began, they have deliberately covered up the truth about what's been going on in my medical situation because they are acting in bad faith. You're talking Labor Board, WSIB, Attorney General, the Premier of Ontario, Justice Minister of Canada, and the parliaments all between. Every sworn to uphold the Constitution, and the laws of Ontario. Well, I got proof. They deliberately allowed the employer. I got injured at work in 2004. They deliberately allowed this employer to double their accident rate for 5 years before I got there. They were operating illegally from 1999 until after my accident, when a worker safety rep was finally put in place after my accident in 2004, and only because of the prominence that I was bringing to it. So what does that mean for every employer out there? And let me say again, same as the medical community, it's full of people that are being held hostage trying to do the right thing. 99% of the employers out there are all operating legally. They're following the law, and they're being penalized anyway, especially over 20 employees, because the government has got it scammed down. It is deliberately set up to undermine the very law that they claim to protect. It is set up for the sole purpose of interfering with people's ability to get treatment. And I have it all on tape. Evidence in their words. Because I have a brain injury and I've had to digitally record my contacts. Not to mention the documented evidence of my documents, medical and otherwise. In 2004, I graduated with distinction from a local college with network engineering, and I made the mistake of putting on a pair of work boots and going working for this illegally operating employer that was facilitated and enabled by the very people who swear to uphold the law and to prevent people from this from happening. 1999 to 2004, in 2004, June, I was injured at work by having an industrial-sized skid dropped on my head, full force. I was left unconscious, unbeknownst to me, left unconscious in the lunchroom for an hour and a half of missing time. There was no call to the police, even though it was deemed a critical injury, which is severe loss of consciousness or loss of limb or loss of life. This company went in cover-up mode, just like they were trained to by the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board and the Labor Board. They were under 20 employees, which means no joint health and safety committee, which means they are required to have a worker safety rep on place, on site, or they are operating illegally. When the Labor Board went in, and this has been an ongoing problem with this company, you investigate this company, you will find the same things that I did, and why they have singled me out to target me as a person who needs to be stopped, because I tell the truth, trying to tell the truth. They doubled their accident rate every year for the ones that were reported. First of all, let me explain. There was more than one company, Kitchener Pallet Services and Borden Cold Storage. Borden Cold Storage was using, and labor, they were both using temporary services through Liberty Staffing Services in order to deliberately circumvent the truth about what accidents were happening there and who was responsible for them. Every year they effectively doubled their accident rate, which means year one there was 3. Next year there was 7. And that's what's reported. It's not totally accurate, but if you go to the public, WSIB is required to carry public statistics, and these are available to anybody. You can see how they doubled their accident rate every year, and they never once did their job. With every accident that's reported, Labor Board goes in with an investigator who is to investigate under Occupational Health and Safety Act only. The Occupational Health and Safety Act is very clear. It is binding on the Crown, and it is the first piece of legislation, even before Workplace Safety and Insurance Act, which is the one they like to quote about no right of action. But if you read the rule, it says no right of action if they act in good faith. None of them are acting in good faith. This system has been taken over by those that are responsible for it in bad faith. The sole purpose to hide their wrongdoing, the criminality of what they're doing to patients, the torture. This is against Geneva Convention. This is deliberate. This is not a hoax. The whole purpose is to interfere. What my 12 years of disability recordings proves, especially once WSIB was supposedly shut out of my health care because they cut me off and I went through OHIP. Tried to go through OHIP, I should say, in order to get the proper answers, and started to get the proper answers only to be shut down. And I'm the last official patient in OHIP to be able to challenge them through OHIP. You are not allowed to use OHIP to prove them wrong. And every one of these doctors swear an oath of do no harm, and yet they are, as a political prisoner, forced to do against their Hippocratic oath. This whole system is corrupt. You want to know if disabled are two-tier citizenship? You need more fingers on your hands there, Trudeau. And you're a lying sack of shit. You know exactly what's going on. Because you've been actively participating in the suppression and censorship of what's really going on in this justice system in Canada, because you are the Queen's Prime Minister, not Canada's. You are here like the Crown in order to protect the Crown. You are representatives of the Crown, even though we supposedly have a constitution, which is why you can smugly send people to their death on behalf of disability, on behalf of rights, constitutional rights that you know do not exist, because you need a lawyer to get them, and even then you're guaranteed not to get them. Because lawyers are there to protect the Crown, not us. And if there's one thing that my tapes will show, and my accusation, I am publicly declaring myself a political prisoner of Canada. That I have had my rights systemically and deliberately stripped from my person as a person with a disability because I dare speak the truth. And they only want to cover up. If I have so many rights in Canada, how come I can't get a proper statement taken of fact? Only because the people I'm making the claims about are the ones that are supposed to be protecting us. And this is rampant throughout all of Canada's disability system. They manage disability. UN protocol on disability rights was supposedly, this is what Accessibility Ontarians with Disabilities Act and everybody else is supposed to be based on. These protected rights when they are acting criminally. Right now this has culminated in, I'm in the middle of a pain crisis right now. It's really hard to do. It's hard to even concentrate because they deliberately put me in this state to make it difficult to relate. May 1st of 2015, I made the mistake of going to the regional courthouse in Waterloo to ask for help. I had been trying to get assistance with having myself properly represented before the courts since 2004. Since when we started uncovering the truth of what's been happening. Larry Ketchmark was the manager of the provincial court services here in Kitchener for the Ontario Provincial Court. So that's for all of Ontario, right? Just like Ontario laws are for everybody in Ontario, not just those of privilege who get to pick and choose which ones they want to follow. Labour Board deliberately allowed this employer. We uncovered when I got in an accident. Found out they left me in the lunchroom unconscious for over an hour and a half missing time. 9.5 hours in an ER unescorted by anybody from work, no police called. with a serious head injury. 9.5 hours in an ER is not just a trifling thing. It was not just a concussion, which is what they tried to say it was. They didn't give me a neck brace when I went there. They made medical errors. Well, they call them medical errors. I call them deliberate. And either way, it was meant to interfere with my proper treatment. I was brought in. They made medical errors. I was serious, more serious than what they said, and they kicked me out of there because they tried to say it was a concussion. Because they're covering up for the employer. The police should have been called immediately because I was unescorted from work and I was unable to speak for myself mostly. There was no way to say what happened other than it was a workplace injury. Right away the system kicked into their two-tier system where workplace injury doesn't get the same medical care as everybody else. They made an error. They did a CT without contrast. And it didn't show what type of injury I had, which is restricted blood flow, of being hit in the head with an over 100-pound skid because the employer refused to follow the law. They set up the play that got me injured. They allowed this person to continue working there even though he was a clear danger. They did nothing to correct the situation under law, including the WSIB and Labor Board. And because we uncovered the truth, they turned their attention to me. And they thought they'd beat me by just shutting me out. I had a family doctor who abandoned me. There are serious ramifications. Even when I was meant to go to AIM Clinic, and I went to AIM Clinic, they reported I was not oriented to person, place, or time with a head injury. Did not call an ambulance for the second time, because when I was hurt at work, they were only required to do one thing: call an ambulance. And they didn't. ER covered it up. They sent me into the hands of the WSIB, where they knowingly withheld information, even though a nurse case manager was directed to and instructed to tell the truth. They covered up. The whole WSIB is there to do nothing but cover up their wrongdoing and interfere with your ability to get a safe workplace and proper treatment. Then I'm sent to their... I go to AIM Clinic. Another time without... Anyway, I can't go through this all in my privacy. I'm not entitled to privacy. They deliberately covered up what's going on at this employer. This employer was doubling their accident rate every year for 4 years before my accident. And they did, Labor Board, when I say they, I mean Labor Board, WSIB, the employer, and especially the law did absolutely nothing to uphold the law, to uphold their duty under law. As a matter of fact, they circumvented their duty under law and acted criminally instead. They created fraud on every legally operating employer out there. Because if you have over 20 employees, you could have been doing everything right, following the law. 99.9% of the employers out there do. But they allow and cultivate the culture of these companies of under 20 employees, who the only one who has the power to correct the situation is WSIB, Labor Board, and the law, and instead they facilitate them. My accusation is clear. None of them were acting in good faith, which led to not only a myriad of accidents before mine, but my critical injury. And you'll be proud to know they allowed, even with all the stuff we brought forward, and we're trying to bring forward, they allowed 3 more critical injuries at this workplace that we know of. Critical injury defined as loss of life, loss of limb, or loss of consciousness. All under the tutelage of WSIB and the Ontario government. And when I say Ontario government, I mean all three. They all know what's going on. I have it on tape. I tried to reach out to everybody out there, and they all did the same thing. But hey, that's the beauty of being a brain injured person and telling them that they're being taped, and them giving permission for being taped. Because I own all copyrights. They gave their permission. They are date stamped, time stamped. They give their name, their position, who they are working for. So when I'm trying to bring this before the court, I need it transcribed only. And we need the appropriate people brought before the proper authority, which the government of Canada and the justice system is dead set upon preventing happening, which is why they, instead of going after these people and doing the right thing, they instead decided to systemically strip me of my rights and all protections under the law. I had a family physician who, when I brought up the truth about what's going on, he dropped me mid-treatment because he was caught. He did not advocate for me, and he was protected by the system. I was vilified, and I'm being called a criminal because I dare speak the truth, and I got it on tape. So I'm not just accusing, I've got actual tape. I've got actual documentation showing how, even though AIM Clinic here in Kitchener deliberately suppressed information and deliberately let me wait 3 months, the nurse case manager for WSIB deliberately withheld vital information. They deliberately covered up what was really going on with my case. I was abandoned by the healthcare system and let to wait for 3 months, which made my symptoms worse. And I honestly know from our research that the main reason why I am the way I am is because of what they did and didn't do to me in following what they're required to by law, because nobody's making them. The law in Ontario is corrupt. The government in Ontario is corrupt. They deliberately oppress disabled. They are getting away literally with murder because there is no such thing as patient safety in Canada, let alone Ontario. Only to go to these places with lots of reports showing how I've been repeatedly harmed. And there is more than questionable aspect as to how they handled my case medically and otherwise. That they have kept me from. This is oppression and suppression under the Geneva Convention. This is criminal, international criminal violations by the government of Canada in their active suppression of the truth. There was a UN protocol. We signed a protocol for UN rights, human rights treaties, and especially one called UN Protocol on the Rights of the Disabled. And they came out with a report at the same time as the Rapporteur's report for the Indigenous people, where the government of Canada is actively and suppressing it. This is censorship because it gave it reveals exactly what kind of system they expose me to. I am asking for the special investigator of the UN Committee on Rights of Disabled to immediately look at my case, because I have got tapes of trying to go through the human rights system for Ontario and Canada, and I can prove unequivocally it is set up for one thing and one thing only, and that is to lie to everybody and keep the lid on what's really happening here in Canada. Really interesting, they got David Baker Law getting accolades for arch disability law management. Think about that for a minute. Disability Law Management. This organization is they're one of the ones that helped bring that Supreme Court case where not one disabled person was asking for the right. We want proper representation of proper health care, but they're pushing through. Hey, here's their agenda. Suppress the truth. Suppress statements because, hey, what in truth do all of us people have to say? Group homes that are murdering people, in Ontario being protected. Harm upon the patient repeatedly in every province. For the last 10 years, free trade. They traded our rights for free. And our representation under the law is down to disability law management. How to manage the disability law in Canada. Well, you know what? I'm here to tell you, if there's not a basic human right of being able to take my statement purely because the people I'm accusing are the ones that are supposedly upholding the law, that is deliberate. That is international human rights violation, and the crown of which the Prime Minister is the crown. Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister of the Crown, not of the people of Canada. The Governor General represents the Crown. The Justice Minister in Canada represents the Crown. They all represent the Crown, not the Constitution, because if this Constitution is worth the shit paper it's written on, none of this would be talked about. And if this was the cornerstone of somebody's law, oh, it is all right, but not the way they tout it. This is the cornerstone of law right here, because privilege. Hey, I'm going to save the taxpayers a bunch of money. You want to know how privileged they are above the law? Look at this fiasco with Mr. Duffy and his patronage and privilege. The law, the Constitution, which they all swore, including Mr. Trudeau, swore to uphold the Constitution, did you not, sir? Well, that Constitution says you will uphold the Constitution, which means my right to representation under the law. You are not here to protect the Crown. 1982, that Queen came on our Parliament and signed our Constitution over to us, but then left her laws of privilege to interfere with that very document. And if that was part of our Constitution and not part of it, entrenched, Mr. Harper in front of the Knesset says how it's entrenched in the very law of Canada. Well, then they'd be teaching it from every law school. Every MP sitting in any legislature in this country will have what has been provided for them. The UN, there is a guide to parliamentarians provided by the UN. There is multi-billions of dollars of legal opinion on what constitutes accommodation. There is no accommodation. The only accommodation is for privilege. And my 12 years of tape proves that. The actions of the regional government, this regional courthouse, we're supposed to be included in society. And yet here's the fact. Hitler never broke the law. Hitler followed the letter of the law, just like Justin and every other leader of this free world claims. They're following the letter of the law, which is to protect the privileged. Are we ruled or are we self-ruled? Because what does this do? It protects the doctors who harm me. There is no patient safety. They are deliberately, there is no good faith in government anywhere. As long as they support that human rights abuser and they profess to follow a crown, because this comes down to, do public cameras protect the public or do they protect the terrorists? because I'm publicly accusing the Waterloo Regional Court Services, Waterloo Regional Police Services, Legal Aid Ontario, the Attorney General of Ontario, the Premier of Ontario, the whole landlord. Anywhere there's a tribunal, there is no law going on, and they are all using it to defy their duty under law. They are the cause of this. And I have been persecuted for 12 years because I dared walk in the wrong employer and ask the right questions. I was left in the ER for 9.5 hours and then left to go home to suffer a concussion. Little bump on the head, even though my symptoms, you look at the ER report and it is evident that I was getting worse. They were required, matter of fact, Dr. Baskerville, and this is the one they don't answer. This is when all that stuff was going on. You couldn't get near the door with a temperature. He related to us that he was on his third 12-hour shift at the ER because the ER doctor that was supposed to replace him did not show up. June 21st, 2004. He was made by administration to work while he was sick. We found this out because of investigating what we could and uncovering what was documented in the documents. He did a CT without contrast, and even though I was getting worse, when I first went in, it was just anyway, my ER reports speak for themselves. I was all four extremities by the time I went to leave there and they kicked me out. He was talking about sending me by ambulance to London after 9.5 hours, not knowing what to do. We didn't have a car at the time, and my caregiver Denise asked if she could go with me, and he explained it was not against insurance because he was going to send me by Air Orange. You know, the ambulance? But then I guess I didn't rate because I just had regular OHIP. And I was covered by OHIP supposedly. But what does OHIP give you? Nothing. Except for their wanton disregard. And I was sent away. I immediately started having problems. I had trouble with walking. They ignored everything I said, especially my family physician, Dr. John Pope, from New Family Vision, or whatever they call themselves now. He did nothing to advocate for me. He deferred to the WSIB and handed me over to them, only to find out I was told by Kevin Kelly at AIM Clinic that with a head injury I was not oriented to person, place, or time, and had fluctuating vital signs across two different, what do you call it when they you're referred to them, and then they medical exams. He deliberately withheld it from me and my caregiver. He told my nurse case manager exactly, and it's in their notes, and she deliberately suppressed the information. They were required to do the same thing they did when an accident happened at work. They were required to call an ambulance, and they didn't. They let me get on a bus and go home and sleep for 3 months because all the data that we uncovered later said that with a closed head injury, improper testing is virtually impossible to get proper results after 3 months. But that's just coincidence. They had me go home and sleep for 3 months, and my doctor capitulated and did absolutely nothing to help me. So I ended up going to their head injury clinic in Toronto, and they took tests there. They did MRIs and CTs there, and using the very same, even though I started showing worse symptoms, the nurse case manager and adjudicator, Kim Wood-LaRue, who is now the manager of business services in Kitchener because she was rewarded for her good work were able to interfere with doctors, because doctors, that's what the WSIB does. They interfere with your ability to get treatment. Even though the medical information was showing that there's a serious problem, they tried to shut it down, and they directed that I was pre-injury status, no restrictions. Well, less than a month later, I ended up in the ER at Grand River Hospital again after a 9.5-hour stay. After other things that happened, which are documented and ignored, all of which fall under medical error. All of a sudden, I'm in ER, same ER. My caregiver, Denise, brings me in there. Doctor noticed head injury, severe head injury, wanted to do CT and MRI. This is in 2004 at the end. 2004, November. So he immediately asked for CT and MRI, and my caregiver was on the ball. She said that he just had that in Toronto, at Toronto Western University Hospital, under the ABI clinic of the Toronto Western Hospital, which I was deliberately sabotaged by WSIB. And unbeknownst to him, he said, "Good. What hospital?" And we told him Toronto Western, Toronto University, and he had us do one thing only: sign a release form, so he could look at exactly the same films that these doctors over there claim that I was pre-injury status with no restrictions. And immediately upon reviewing exactly the same tests, he wouldn't let me leave without a neck brace. It wasn't the proper neck brace, but it was a neck brace. And that's the first time I started getting help for everything I was going for. First time I got any kind of relief. But my question to them and to everybody since then was, excuse me, he looked at the very same films and he caught it, because the whole purpose of WSIB and their system is to vilify, victimize, criminalize, and harm, and keep you from the truth. It was only after this stuff went on that we started investigating the company more and what was actually going on under Labor Board, to which they started, well, it's a public document, it's public record what they did. They allowed this employer to continue working. They did not put a worker safety rep in place. They allowed him to sign off on citations where it clearly says on the citation that if you knowingly sign this falsely, it is a criminal offense. They protected everyone criminally. More importantly, they allowed this culture to exist, which means they deliberately undermined every valid employer out there that was doing the right thing by allowing this. And others, there's others. There's got to be more. By allowing these employers to do this in these medical places to circumvent the law, they have increased costs of OHIP and costs of labor. But more importantly, that is deliberate fraud. Using the system as a means of deliberate fraud. When the director of Western Region on one of my tapes admits, and here I ask, this employer did nothing to correct the situation. They had a lawyer the whole time. They had 2 representatives from Workplace Safety Insurance Board. One's called a customer service rep, which his only job is to make sure they're in compliance with the law. Then there's a customer service rep, which is supposedly for the injured workers. Not one of them caught that there was no worker safety rep. Labor Board went in with their investigators. Seek the occupational health and safety report for my accident June 21st, 2004 from Kitchener Pallet Services, where even though they were responsible for everything that happened there, they were so protected that they dared put down not applicable as to the reasons that led to the accident. Toronto West hospitals that have been implicated in covering up for WSIB alone in medical, and they rewrite the truth. They cherry pick. WSIB is an insurance company, and they are responsible to send the file. They are responsible to keep patient history in one place. That is, I am identified by my social insurance number. Clearly to Labor Board, to the government, and to these employers. There is no distinction as to anybody else but me because of that number and other identifiers in the workplace. They deliberately cover up for the employers. They allowed him to operate. And because of his doubling of the accident rate, and we don't even know if that's true because they allowed misreporting through temporary services in order to hide the true nature of true accidents at these places. They have caused fraud. Every employer who did the right thing, that's been operating legally, I have the means to do a class action suit against the government because I've got it all on tape. And I will share my medical documentation with whoever needs it. And especially these tapes of them in their own words. So again, if he's operating illegally, how can that be good faith? Is Labor Board operating in good faith when they don't do anything to correct the situation and they allow it to continue while people keep getting hurt there? Is WSIB acting in good faith when they deliberately cover it up and make sure that the person who's supposed to be there is not in place? Is the Workplace Slavery and Interference Board the only purpose to be there is interfere with health care? Because that's what my proof shows. You think that's over? You think that's medical error from Grand River Hospital? Them reading the same documentation and the same tests to say I'm still hurt? My doctor abandoned me because I caught him. And I asked him a question when I asked him, did the nurse case manager relay that information about me not being oriented to person, place, or time and fluctuating vital signs, or Kevin Kelly, my caregiver, which was referred by my doctor, not WSIB, because this all happened before WSIB got involved. It only started when they got involved to cover up. My doctor fully supported them. He did nothing to help me. He put me on then we found out he put me on an imaginary pain list for over 2 years while he lied to me. He was openly lying to me, openly handed me off to those bastards. And then he fucking sold me out when they found out that I was really hurt. Because they were thinking there's no way. Well, guess what? They cut me off. They said I was pre-injury without restrictions. I got a letter from the employer from where it shows they were covering up. The employer, when I was reinstated because of my symptomology, they wrote a letter saying we had a deal. And all the facts are there. They got together in August 16th or 17th of 2004 and dictated my outcome over coffee. Worker safety rep, or I'm not worker safety rep, the worker rep for all those partners in WSIB, Labor Board, and the government, and the accident employer, and it's all documented. So you think that's the end? No, they cut me off. They put me into a pain crisis. They were told that it was responsible to put me in a pain crisis, and while they were claiming to look for something to put me in, they deliberately put me in a pain crisis and tortured me. It's torture under the Geneva Convention and any other auspices. I finally go to Shidok Hospital through OHIP because I forced my doctor to send me there before he dumped me. And again, I go to Shidok, and I'm not under WSIB at this time. They cut me off. They're saying that I'm a faker, and as a result, I implemented my own protocol for informed consent, which they totally ignored. Because they were not contributing to anything, they were forbidden from any information because I went through two separate entities through OHIP. One was Shidok, where I finally got an MRI spec test done, which was the proper test should have been done. 1 year, 7 months post-injury, proves unequivocally I had a brain injury from that accident. And what did they do? They tried to shut it down again. Because guess who's running the program? WSNIB. I was never out from under their thumb because they were allowed to interfere directly with treatment. Again, I went through a deliberate pain crisis. They tried to get me the course. It was exactly what they were supposed to be looking for, and they denied it because the truth was starting to come out. And the truth is they control this system because the minute I proved my brain injury through OHIP prevents any other person from going through under OHIP. They closed the door because I was able to prove what they were trying not to prove. Every hospital's been involved in this directly and deliberately. The ones who I caught in subjugation of my rights as a person with a disability, let alone as a patient, begins with Grand River Hospital, KW Hospital, whatever the hell they want to call themselves now. They're still dangerous. Matter of fact, they have harmed me so much and have taken no steps to accept responsibility other than this latest fiasco of conspiracy between the playing partners that I have made a do not touch order in effect since 2005. I could have both arms and legs cut off in a car accident right in front of that hospital. And I would rather roll my way all the way over to St. Mary's Hospital before I'd cross that threshold because you are in danger. There is no patient safety in this province. The only protection going on is for the wrongdoing that is happening every day. And anybody who dares speaks out knows exactly what I'm talking about. Non-medical personnel directing treatment, people at WSIB, with a roster of doctors who do nothing to investigate the physical person. They're a rubber stamp to yes-men them, to give them the seemingly legitimacy of the medical community. I have evidence more and more that there's nurse case managers are not allowed to direct treatment, but they do all the time. Matter of fact, I have a direct document that shows that the nurse case manager who was responsible for everything that happened here deliberately defied an instruction by her superior when she made her application for me to go to the head injury clinic. And they buried it. That's what they do. So I got an MRI spec proving brain injury. They also had me go through one of their programs where independently of each other, because I did not let one know about the other, they both came up with the same findings, which is clear in the evidence of what's going on, that I have been harmed. There are serious questions as to what they've been doing to me, and yet no doctor steps forward. I've got report after report of harm, definitive harm, and I keep going to people trying to get help, and nobody's there to help. They just tell me I'm got PTSD with headaches because they said that the MRI spec was subjective, not objective findings, because they make it up as they go along. They kept me from the only time I'm allowed to have a full medical review of my medical situation with WSIB is called NEL. And they did everything to make sure I didn't have that either. I tried going before the tribunal. Every stop, every attempt. They victimized me, criminalized me, and then stole my health care and my life, using the police as a means of subjugation and obstruction. The law is here to obstruct the truth. I am a political prisoner. On May 1st of 2015, I tried going to the courthouse here in Kitchener to try and get assistance again, because there's none from the legal community at all. All I was trying to do is get an oral presentation to a JP, and they refused that too, because of the content of what I'm bringing forward. This is an obstruction of justice. Because of that, I ended up going without my caregiver to try and talk to the disabled person, disability coordinator, which was supposed to be in place since 2010. Because the police officers, Waterloo Regional Police, it turns out later, who man the front kiosk, they claim they don't work there. There's a sign in the wall that says, if you need the assistance of disability coordinator, just ask any staff member. And the Waterloo Regional Police, their answer is, we don't work here. We don't have to know. Legal aid, same thing. Meanwhile, why do they have it? The courthouse doesn't even have an official person. The judge doesn't even know who that person is. There is nothing in place, even though it's been mandatory under law since 2010, and this building's been open for 5 years with awards of excellence. Design and architectural awards, but you can't even get in the front door as a person with a disability. Go to the front courthouse, see for yourself. Press any disabled button on the outside of that courthouse and you'll have a door open for you. And when you get in the front foyer, and this is ironic because it's a trap for disabled people, they're so full of shit, they can't even get it right. You can't get in. There's no button in that foyer. There is no button you can press that'll open up the door to open it up into the interior of the courthouse where you have to go get checked. You have to be inside the courthouse, pressing a disabled button to open the door going out. There is no disabled button to let you in the door. And it only opens the outside door for the ones outside. And the ones inside only open the inside doors. But when you're in the foyer there, how do you get past as if you're disabled? There's no button. Now you may say, what is the significance of that, Mr. Bacon? Well, I got one question. With all these awards and stuff, and the government's been touting how disability is a priority of this government and intelligent design since what, the early 80s? It's been mandatory. Hey, Mr. Judge, and Mr. Mayor, and Kathleen Wynne, you should be able to answer this because you were the Minister of Housing before you became the Premier. How did they pass inspection? How did they pass the inspection? It doesn't meet the standard, even 5 years after the fact. It's a trap. But it's ironic because it shows exactly the true nature of what is embedded in our legal system when it comes to disability and the management of disability law and disabled persons. You wanted to know if there's abuse in this country? Take my statement. You want to know if there's abuse? Hey, you know what? Waterloo Regional Police, legal aid, regional courthouse. Hey, Chief Justice and that. Kathleen Wynne. It's called Ontario statutes. Ontario law, which means anybody who resides in Ontario it applies to. So let's go back and review Ministry of Housing, because this is the one Ms. Wynne can go ahead and answer because she was the minister. Okay, Minister, what's the number one job of the Ministry of Housing? Legal housing. Legal structure. And yet they have a tribunal whose sole purpose is to support illegally operating landlords. Again, 99% of the landlords out there are doing the right thing. They are following the law. 99% of the population out here is doing exactly what they're required to under our duty under law. To uphold it. To follow it as best we can. And to stand up for it under democracy. Well, your tribunal is there to exist for one thing, and anybody who wants the answer, go to their website and you look. You want to end homelessness and illegality in Ontario? You need to dismantle the tribunal. Because even though, let me ask you something, hey, all you landlords and all you tenants out there, who pays the taxes on tenancies? It may be in the landlord's name, but the people who pay for it are the people who pay the rent. The number one job of the housing, actually every agency, we're talking about housing right now, is to ensure compliance under the building code when allowing permits. And this goes to, this trickles right down to the cities with their bylaw enforcement. Because the only job of bylaw enforcement in any capacity is to determine the legality of that structure for the body that happens to be overseeing it. Whether it's a tribunal or a court, doesn't matter. Their only job is to say, is this a legal structure? Is this a legal rental? And I'm sorry, if it does, there's a little known law that nobody wants you to know. If any portion of any rental is illegal, they are not allowed to charge rent for it. You are entitled to an abatement of rent, which means health hazards, bed bugs. That's the province's problem. And yet they set the trap again and again for the next unsuspecting person to fall into their trap of tribunal undermines the law. Because tribunal is there for one thing, to protect illegally operating landlords. The last 3 times I went before that board as a person with a disability under the auspices of legal aid, they sabotage the case deliberately. Because that's what they are paid to do. $647 million for legal aid in Southern Ontario to suppress precedent-setting cases. Landlords, if I own one property in matter of fact, no. This is for Miss Wynne. If I own one property in Ontario, or 10 properties in Ontario, if I have been hauled in before any body, legal body, and instructed on what my responsibilities as a legally operating landlord is with regard to standard of fucking rental, do I need to come 20 times on different properties? Or how about on the same property? Is this an effective use of taxpayers' money to use legal aid to cover for these illegally operating landlords, where many of them are unsafe rentals? And this goes for this so-called, how they're handling community and social services, Lutherwood. They are all part and parcel of the same cover-up. They are deliberately lying to the taxpayers. They are deliberately using illegally operating landlords to prop up. They're making tenants pay for illegal places because they're covering up what's really going on. There is no justice out there. Anywhere they privatize anything is really funny, because the only thing they got out of this area, LHINs and that, CCAC, oh, wait till I get to the punchline about their complicity. The Ontario government is actively cooperating in fraud in the medical community. 90% of the stuff that is being closed door negotiated is knowingly criminal acts by the government and those that they get to participate. Air Orange is a tip of the iceberg. You want the whole thing, I've got it on tape. And there's only one thing that happens from this judicial review, because here you have health boards allowing bed bugs. It's the landlord's responsibility. It is the responsibility of the health board, and yet they allow new unsuspecting people to come in and spend their money to stand up for rights they never had in the first place and never will have, because the government is incapable of acting in good faith. Persecution, two-tiered citizenship. Fuck, you're behind the 8 ball. The whole thing is a scam. And until we stop supporting these people who act with impunity, nothing will change. Justin Trudeau, you can go ahead and tell people when you first heard about the UN Protocol on Disability Rights, you lying son of a bitch. Go ahead and tell them how you've been suppressing the truth. How that we are less than Aboriginal, murdered and missing Aboriginal women and Aboriginal people. Two-tiered citizenship? You know what? Here it is. I am publicly accusing the Canadian government, the Justice Minister, Prime Minister Trudeau, ex-Prime Minister Harper, the Queen of England, of deliberate human rights abuses and the deliberate suppression of the law in Canada. I am a political prisoner of Canada. I have been tortured at will, and I'm continuing to be tortured because of the truth of what I got. And you can't get a simple, if I can't get a simple statement taken down because of the merits of what I'm talking about, who's free? But they got us, nobody asked for disabled to be part of this euthanasia. But it's coincidence that the medical community, because the truth about how we're really being treated is being criminalized and victimized. They created a court solely for the purpose because doctors are routinely prescribing meds which they are not allowed to prescribe because the person is supposed to be under the care of psychiatric care and or counseling, ongoing counseling in conjunction with the prescription. They deliberately ignore that part. They are deliberately giving people drugs that are worse for them. I went through a 2-year program through OHIP in order to help determine my chronic pain, which was deliberately brought on me by the WSIB and direct interference in my health care. They deliberately, I went 2 years through an efficacy program through the OHIP in order to determine the right course of treatment, which ended up being morphine. And I am totally documented, totally supported by a government program, only to be turned loose on the program to be called a drug seeker. That whenever they wanted to, they could cut me off my meds for chronic pain and put me into a pain crisis at will, because even though it's documented, I'm not entitled, because I'm a political prisoner in that fight. And nothing my documentation will ever save me. A tug of war, I had no choice. After torture, and no help again. Every time I complain, I'm criminalized. Because, hey, guess what? They made the law that we are criminalized now. Criminalized disability, not the causes of it. And Hitler didn't do that. Hitler operated by the law, but he never criminalized disability. And yet here we are. They deliberately, because of what's going on, I had to wean myself off my meds myself and go strictly on medical marijuana, which they're not helping me with either. This is torture and I can't do this anymore. But that's not the piece of resistance. Try and go to the MP, because I record. I'm not allowed to talk to them because I record and because they got caught. Catherine Fife. I went to her and she pretended to help me and was allowing me to record until I caught them working with the corrupt liberal government of the day to help cover up the truth, because that's what the political parties do. They are all here sworn to uphold the crown, first and foremost, not us. So you want to know why everything's shit? That's why. Because I can't get it written down and I've got it on tape. All I gotta do is press play. You can hear it in your own words. They're scared shitless. They know why. Here's proof that they're scared. They deliberately got between them the regional courthouse, the manager of the regional courthouses, Wadley Regional Police Services, Grand River Hospital, Maplehurst Detention Center, all conspired to turn me into a criminal. Instead of providing me the means as required under accessibility to persons with disability, solely because of the nature of the merits of what I'm bringing forward. Because there's no defense. They deliberately waited till I came in without my caregiver for the first time. Within less than 120 seconds, they called all available. I can barely walk. I'm visibly disabled. I am visibly, physically incapable. And yet within less than 120 seconds, because they couldn't answer the question, they kept asking me. And this is why they buried it. Because it's all on tape. It's all on the top of the line audio and video array in the city. But because it's controlled by the Wadley Regional Police and the Crown, it's paid for by public funds. It is there to protect the public They are protecting the public on our behalf, are contracted to do so, that they control. And because of what happened at Grand Valley, where what they don't know about what we don't know about what they're doing to protect us won't hurt them, well, they made a new rule out of that Grand Valley that the Crown determines what's evidence. So even though I only went in there looking for, because they were saying they were working with me, and they never returned the call. So I go in there asking to talk to her, and they don't even know who it is. There's a sign on the wall that says, "Hey, just ask anybody." And because they weren't properly trained, because nobody gives a shit about accessibility in reality, I was assaulted within less than 120 seconds, but I believe it was deliberate. It was deliberate because of my tapes and because of my threat. I am a threat. I am the biggest threat to Canada's bullshit ever. And they know it. You want proof? Less than 120 seconds, I'm holding my hands out asking for help. And they're being ridiculous, going, well, you gotta leave, you gotta leave, you gotta leave. And I was trained by the Waterloo Regional Police for security. So I know the minute they go, you gotta leave, you gotta leave, you gotta leave, that's trespassing. And I was saying, ridiculous, this is ridiculous. Okay, you need to arrest me for trespassing for me to get a lawyer, then go ahead. And I put my hands out for them to arrest me. And instead, some son of a bitch on steroids tackled me, put my arms above my head when I can't breathe. I yelled, "I'm disabled. What are you doing?" Dragged me out of the door. Now get this, if that's there for public, then he deliberately obstructed justice by sending me outside because they claim there's nothing on tape outside, nothing on video, nothing on audio. So that could only mean one thing. He deliberately obstructed justice to cover up what they were about to do to me. Less than 120 seconds, they had all available officers called from inside the courthouse and from the police station down the street. Little did I know the reason why he tackled me is because they already had a platoon of terrorists, trained police, coming down from the police station to assist in my arrest. I am a disabled person. I immediately went into fight or flight. They had my hands above my head. I couldn't breathe because he's choking me. I begged him to stop and let me breathe, and he wouldn't. I had to hit him with my cards to protect myself. Then I was tackled by I don't know how many, because they took my glasses away, and I couldn't see anything. They deliberately used my disability against me and put me into a PTSD. I'm begging with them, please stop, I'm disabled. They're telling me I'm not disabled. I'm resisting arrest, so they're punching and kicking me. They're finally on. I couldn't breathe. I still couldn't breathe. They're forcing all the air out of my lungs because this is what they're trained to do. 200 pounds per officer, and I can't even stand up. And once I hit the cop, then it's like, oh, he hit a cop, and I'm getting attacked and punched, and my legs are spasming because of my disability. I'm terrified of falling. I didn't even see them do it, but they're piling on me. I can't breathe. I say I can't breathe. And that's when they decide to deploy the pepper spray in my mouth. That's when they found out my disability is true because it didn't affect me. So now I got resisting arrest, 6 officers, my pepper spray. I assaulted a cop, supposedly. I'm hog-tied. I'm screaming out, I'm disabled. What are you doing? Please, if anybody saw that, please come forward. Please come forward and tell the truth. I was dragged to the cop car like a piece of shit. Because my legs failed because they beat me up and I'm disabled. I'm treated like a sack of shit. Still can't see who's doing it to me. They haul me back to the police station up on Frederick Street. While in PTSD, they deliberately sent my PTSD up to use against me. They brought me into the police station, and I can't see anything. All there is bodies everywhere. I'm asking for the sergeant. Sergeant doesn't even answer at first. Then I ask for, where's the sergeant? He says, I'm right here, and you have no rights. You have no rights. They're all piling in to see the guy who hit the cop. I'm getting attacked from all the fucking. I was assaulted, but I was injured. They didn't give a shit. They just kept on me. I'm on PTSD, full-blown PTSD, but now I'm begging for help. I even cry out, I want your superior officer under Police Services Act, because I know what's going on, and they're doing this deliberately, and they're telling me I have no rights. So the ambulance shows up, and I'm in full-blown PTSD. I gotta tell them the truth.
Yeah, but not like this right now.
I don't know, they didn't hear this.
Somebody's gonna call an ambulance.
I don't care. I don't
Do you need
care.
an ambulance?
No, shut up and leave me alone. I'm getting this out.
Okay, we can't understand if you're crying, man. You have to take
Stop!
Take a deep
You fucking hurt me! Show my rights! Who wouldn't want to fucking die? Who wouldn't? I fucking dare ya! I'm not at the police station. They sent an ambulance because they got me right where they want me. Ambulance attendants come down. I'm still telling them this is them deliberately setting off my PTSD. I can't see who it is, but there's somebody saying he needs a shot, and it was somebody at the police station. There was no doctor there. There was no medical doctor there. She was asking me if I needed a shot. I said, no, I just need to get the fuck out of here and get away from this because they're doing it deliberately. They were saying, oh, I need medical care, so I asked for medical care. I asked to be brought to St. Mary's Hospital because KW Hospital since 2006 has had a do not touch order. They are forbidden from touching me because of their cover-up and their harm that they did to me, and they refused to. They criminalized the complainant. And not only that, because of the no do not touch order, any evidence they would have came up with there would have automatically been called into question, which is exactly why they sent me there. Even when I went to the hospital, they did not answer the question. I could have been sent to St. Mary's for physical examination and examination of my mental state. And instead, they sent me right into the jaws of the lion, deliberately again setting off my PTSD. I was under they gave me a shot without permission, without medical directive. When they didn't need to, I was clearly identifying that it was a situation they had me in that put me in this state. Which means I was oriented to person, place, or time, right? And what was happening to me exactly? But instead, they kept my glasses away from me, gave me a shot anyway, put me in the ambulance, told me I was being taken to St. Mary's, only after I got taken out of the ambulance and I can't see anything. And I'm being brought into this room because they're doing it for psych eval. Because the whole point is, oh, if they get me to get them to treat them, then it's all over, right? Deliberate. With only their fucking safety in mind. Deliberately withholding my rights as a patient, as a person under arrest, as a person with a PTSD, and I didn't even get my rights read. Nobody read me my rights. I don't remember getting my rights read to me. Anyway, they send me to, all of a sudden I find out I'm in St. Mary's. So I start freaking out again, right where they want me, PTSD, but I was still oriented to person, place, and time. I even called the patient relations down, which, oh, if I'm out of my mind, why are they talking to me? And they acknowledged there's a do not touch order. But the doctor came in and signed, even though I was oriented to person, place, or time and asked them a valid question, they signed me off into their fucking little plan because that was the plan all along. They did this deliberately. Because then, hey, but they weren't expecting something. I had a power of attorney made. I had a power of attorney put in place, putting my caregiver as sole decision maker. And they were keeping me from her too. They used my family, even though that power of attorney was clear. They utilized every aspect to try and fuck with everybody. Deliberately. Against my rights. When I was signed in, it says right on the form, you're entitled to legal counsel without delay. They withheld it from me deliberately because of what's going on. They tried to make an attempt to a phone call to a lawyer who was in the middle of something. I vaguely remember that. But they wouldn't allow me to speak privately. And they wouldn't allow me to speak, so the lawyer hung up. So I was not given representation. They brought me upstairs and held me under a 72-hour hold, supposedly. But then kept coming in the room asking me if it was all right if they treated me. Asking me permission. And I said, yes, I want to go to St. Mary's. I want to be tested at St. Mary's. And they refused. So I'm held in there for some hearing. Somebody decides I'm charged with trespassing, causing a disturbance, and failure to leave or something like that. Yeah, because they looked at the audio and video array of what happened. And it was all caught on audio and videotape. And because the Crown now decides what is evidence or not, because it shows wrongdoing of them, it's not evidence. So they ended up, this is all a put on. They decided to charge me. They brought me to Maplehurst. I was released. And I was supposed to be released at the courthouse, but they sent me to Maplehurst because I had a lawyer appointed for me, the one that is responsible for setting up this mental health court. Stephen Gale. Deliberately to obstruct any ability to get anything done on what really happened to me. So they sent me to Maplehurst. They asked me if I wanted Gen Pop. I said I'm perfectly fine for general population. They deliberately put me in a medical hold. And from the whole time I was put in KW Hospital till the time I was released, May 7th or 8th, it was 24/7 light deprivation torture. Deliberate. And then solitary confinement, withheld from proper medical care. Maplehurst comes in after, just before I'm released. And again, they ask me, do I want medical care? And I said, of course I do. Nobody's checked out my injuries. I refused them to treat me at KW. And guess what? She asked me, she said, oh, I'll get you care, but you have to sign this release for Grand River Hospital. at Maplehurst Detention Center. Now think about that for a moment. Not one of the evidence of this 72-hour hold was entered in against me to get me in this mental health court. Not one person has been able, and especially the Crown or the court, has done anything to answer how I got in this court. Before this court. They have obstructed. This whole purpose of this court is to obstruct the truth. So none of this medical, because the reason why is if they had to enter the evidence as medical as evidence, they would have to have the audio and video of the whole thing. So that's why they're staying away from it, because it's all caught on tape. Everything I described to you about their wrongdoing, the deliberate nature of their acts with regard to this malicious prosecution for the sole purpose of trying to turn me into a criminal because of the merits of what I'm bringing forward. A judge who supposedly swears to the Constitution and upholds a police state because the evidence that we've been asking for. I am asking for a lawyer, proper representation to come forward. Their only job is to bring this before the appeals court. And I need them to make sure that all public tapes, everything paid for by the public, which is everything at the courthouse, everything in the police, in Grand River Hospital, all these tapes where it shows exactly what they did to me in their own words. I am asking and demanding a lawyer come forward and defend my rights. That their lack of accommodation is unconstitutional. That this is a criminal malicious prosecution to victimize and criminalize me as a person with a disability because of their criminal activity. That all they need to do is turn over all tapes, interior and exterior, from the courthouse. Audio and video array. We are requesting all tapes and audio, including the open channels that are left by the officers when they make that attack on me. May 1st. They always leave a channel open and record it. I am asking for all audio and video and all records from Grand River Hospital to do with the May 1st incident and before. I am asking for all audio and video of my incarceration at Maplehurst Detention Center, illegal incarceration. I am asking for a transcript of every court case that was done on my, because they tried to make it that I didn't even have to show up for the case. Oh, they got their act down. And especially the in-camera sessions. I am asking for a lawyer to come forward who has constitutional experience, human rights abuse experience, international human rights law, because I want that Crown brought before the International Criminal Court. I am asking for standing before the UN Committee on Disability Rights this June at the UN. I am asking for any legal entity that will help me. I own all copyrights on all tapes because of my disability. I can publish them at any time in their entirety. I need transcription services. But most of all, I need my constitutional fucking rights, you son of a bitch. So take your lip service, pucker it up, and stick it on my ass, you lying sack of shit. Justin Trudeau, immediately come out and tell the truth about the UN Protocol on Disability Rights and your suppression, active suppression of it. How many of your MPs did you give the guide to parliamentarians? How about you, Wynne? You guys tout that you've been doing this human rights? Well, I defy you. I call you a liar to your face. You are nothing but criminal fucking assholes who need to be taken down. And if you don't have the wherewithal to stand up for those rights those fucking people died for, get the fuck out! I'm doing this for all the medical people that are being held hostage too. And you need to make a stand now. Does an MBA, Masters of Business Administration, run the fucking healthcare? Or do you actually advocate for fucking patients? Because the number one list I want on that criminal complaint is Dr. John fucking Pope. And the fucking government of Ontario. And the government of Canada. So you wanted an answer whether people are being persecuted? Come and help me press play. Got the guts? Lying sacks of shit. And I need to remind you, out of the light, I need to remind you, news agencies are here to toe the line. It's information. It's propaganda. Hitler did nothing illegal. He made sure he made the law. And if this is entrenched in law, we would not be having this discussion. It would be the first thing. And the only reason why you don't want to take statements from disabled people is because of the truth we're about to tell. So you know what, David Baker Law? You don't speak for me. None of you speak for me. I'm perfectly capable of speaking for myself. And I'm calling you what you are. You are the reason why terrorism exists. You create terrorism because of this dichotomy of law. Your laws of privilege are gone. And George, the only thing you're going to be ruling is a toilet bowl. Son of a bitch. So, Mr. Trudeau, kiss my fucking ass. I dare you to step up and do the right thing, you son of a bitch. Of course, we already know you're incapable because you've been keeping the lid on it since you've been in office too, sir. Yeah, well, there goes your credibility. Everybody love Trudeau? Well, good. Hopefully you'll send him a care package when he's behind bars for international human rights laws. I met your father. I used to be a lifelong liberal. Now there's only one thing. Government equals corruption. Go to hell.